100 years ago, over 200,000 lions roamed Africa and Asia. Today, that number is about 20,000. That's a 90% reduction in the population of one of the most charismatic creatures in the world. In the Pleistocene era, the lion ranged throughout Eurasia, Africa, and North America. But today, it has been reduced to a fragmented population in the sub-Saharan Africa and one critically endangered population in Western India in the Gir forest. It has been listed as vulnerable on the IUCN Red List since 1996. So, is the lion endangered? Respected Principal Ma'am Anubha Goyal, my dear colleagues, students, and all other attendees, I would like to welcome you to today's session titled Lion Watch. We have with us Anthony Peniston, a lion activist from South Africa, who is handling the Lion Watch Project, a non-profit organization engaged in saving lions from the canned hunting industry and finding responsible, ethical ways to stop this trade. Mr. Peniston had started the Vision Africa Wildlife in 1999 to find solutions to different wildlife-human conflicts. He is based in Limpopo on the boundaries of Botswana. He started his work on conservation first by saving wild animals like cheetah and later on lions. We are honored to have you with us today, Mr. Peniston. You are not audible. We can't hear you.
Suman sent him a message saying that he can't be heard.
I did, ma'am. I sent him a message. I'll call him, maybe that will be better.
Yeah, volume down, sir. His volume is down.
Or his volume is down.
Ma'am, he will restart because he got a message from Zoom saying there's something wrong with his audio. So he'll do it just now.
Suman, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you, Anthony.
Okay, great. Now I just got to hear you because for some reason it's cut you out, but as long as you guys can hear me, that's good. Thank you for having me back.
So welcome once again.
Yes. Yes, thank you for the introduction. As you said, my name is Anthony Peniston. I've been working with wildlife and wildlife conflict since 1999. It's an ever-changing world. We never know how we're going to fix the problems when they come up, but we just keep working on them. Even today, you can see I'm a little bit flustered. We had nothing is simple in the bush. We had total power loss since 7 o'clock last night. And then on the way into our local town today where the school is, where I'm doing the presentation from, we saw an animal stuck on a fence line, and when we went closer, it was a civet. I don't know if you know what a civet is. It's like a big type of badger, spotted badger, and the civet was caught in a snare and then had wrapped itself around the fence. So we had to spend a couple of minutes trying to get it loose, and we had no equipment with us, so it's quite dangerous. I mean, a civet is still a vicious creature, especially in a capture situation like that. So you never know what to expect in the bush, but I made it on time. I'm glad, and I'm here now.
That's a big feat, I would say, after a rescue right in the morning.
Yeah.
I guess it's quite early at your place. It must be around 8 in the morning.
Yes, 8:15, I think. Yeah, 8:09.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we are waiting to hear from you, Mr. Peniston.
Okay. So as the introduction said, lions are now they're listed as vulnerable. What I think is important to note is that's a listing that describes the entire lion population globally, basically, well, within sub-Saharan Africa at least. But if we had to look at areas, if there should be a new classification, I feel is area specific. There are some areas where they're critical or extinct now, and we need to understand that, because it's too easy to make the picture sound a bit better by saying, well, they're only vulnerable and there's a lot more species that are critically endangered. But if you look at their range, they've lost 95% of their range since 1960. It's a hell of a decline, and in most areas they are locally extinct. And it's very important that we take note of this and not just say, well, they're vulnerable. That's one of the first things I wanted to bring up. Lions used to occur in a number of habitats, not just in Southern Africa. As you know, there were a lot of populations in Asia as well. They're almost basically gone. There's one viable population or two viable populations left, and the rest are so fragmented that they can't really be counted as viable populations of Asian lions anymore. So we're losing lions at an alarming rate. Human encroachment is the biggest threat at the moment. There's just too much competition for the same land that the lions need to use for themselves. And for lions to sustain themselves, an average pride in Southern Africa, I won't quote for areas north of me because it's different, but in Southern Africa, an average lion pride needs about 10,000 hectares to sustain itself naturally and to not negatively impact on its own environment. So the amount of space left to lions is shrinking drastically. And although there's a lot of smaller projects popping up where they're trying to create smaller conservation areas that are intensively managed, as good as they are, it's not a true wild free roaming system where genes are being naturally spread throughout the system. So lions are critically endangered, in my opinion. Even though the numbers say they might be vulnerable, with the formulas we use today, I still feel that they are critically endangered. A new threat now that is starting to pop its head up, and it's similar to what happened with rhinos, is the use of lion products. And a lion product is not just the bones, it's also the trophy. And the demand for trophies, which is still a completely legal trade, the demand is rising, and people are catering for this demand by finding easier and cheaper ways to supply these trophies through things like canned breeding and canned hunting and things like that. So the exploitation now is also becoming a big threat. The local mooting market is said to be quite an important threat to lions, where it's used in traditional medicines and different superstitious beliefs. But I still don't feel that this is a main driver in the decline of lions. The decline of lions is purely loss of habitat. There's no more space for them to be. And now the use of lion products in certain Asian markets, as well as the trophy hunting sector, that is putting a bit of pressure on the lions. So that's where we are now. While I'm talking, please feel free to send any questions you'd like. There's so much to go through and we have so little time, and I have so much to say about this topic that I might end up getting off topic a little bit, but you can catch me and bring me back with a few questions. So I'm available for any questions if any do pop up. Unfortunately now, my big focus at the moment is dealing with the breeding and the bad side of the breeding projects and things like that. And I want to just say straight off the bat that in no way is a breeding project for lions has any benefits towards lion conservation. We are not going to save lions in the wild by breeding them in captivity. It makes no sense. It's not an option. And there again, we can go back to the listing as vulnerable. They're listed as vulnerable because there are still enough lions to keep the natural population viable. But the area where they live is decreasing. And that is why they're going extinct in the wild. It's not because of numbers. So in my opinion, it makes absolutely no sense to breed a lion in captivity because we have no place for the lions. It's not an issue of numbers, it's an issue of space. So breeding projects around the world claiming, well, I won't say around the world, I'll say in Africa, because I can understand the Asian lion is a very different animal. But the breeding projects in Africa have no claim to conservation, in my opinion. There is no reason to breed a lion in captivity, put it in the wild, when especially at the moment we're euthanizing wild lions in wild environments because there's nowhere for them to go. When they're breaking out, we're killing them. And now we're claiming that the breeding projects are breeding lions to put them back in the wild. So in my opinion, I'm pretty hard on this one. I'm not going to back down on this one at all. Lion breeding is not a conservation tool at the moment. It's purely to satisfy a demand for products, trophies, and now a new sensation where everybody wants to have their photos taken with lions in different situations, and a whole lot of new people coming up trying to become famous using lions as props. Those are the threats facing lions at the moment.
So, Mr. Peniston, could you tell us how many areas in Africa exactly do you have these lion sanctuaries or protected areas for them?
Currently, there are 28 countries or 28 areas with lions left in sub-Saharan Africa. Tanzania is at the moment the country with the most. They've got the best. They've got the most viable lion population. South Africa is very limited. We really only have a few viable lion populations, one major one, and then a few small splintered populations, which are well managed and intensively managed to try and keep the populations viable, but that cannot be the long-term outlook. We have to find ways to integrate people into areas where lions exist and have them both coexist. So another country which is really good to look at with a great conservation model is Botswana. Botswana is mainly has an unfenced conservation policy, trying to keep things moving free and wild and creating corridors between all the conservation areas so that genes can spread naturally. So currently, of the 28 countries, I'd say there's only maybe 5 or 6 that are really doing well in terms of viable populations going forward. I'm not saying that other countries are not doing a great job conserving what they have left, but looking at a big picture, I'd say there's only 5 or 6 countries that are actually able to say that.
You had said that you would be sharing a video with us. So,
unfortunately, this video is not possible due to my power failure last night. It was not able to. There was some stuff that had to come out with the editing, and unfortunately, there was just no way to do it. So today, I cannot share this video. What I will do is later today or tomorrow, I will put it up on YouTube, and everybody can have a look at it then. But unfortunately, today, with the way things went last night, we're not complaining. It's not often we get rain, and this was the first rain for the season, but it also caused a lot of trouble. We had a complete power outage since 7 o'clock last night. And from where I do my work to when I get home, it's an hour-and-a-half drive. So it's just, the timing is just making it impossible.
no, it's perfectly fine, Mr. Peniston. We understand. I mean, it's a miracle that you could even make it to the webinar after all the things that have been happening in the past few hours. I was ready.
Yes, it was a close one, but I'm glad to have made it. But what I would like to do is, I'd like to go into some of the new techniques coming out for lions and humans to coexist. Things that people are doing around the world. Different organizations are coming up with different strategies to try and incorporate lions into a more human environment. Because if we don't find a way for the two to coexist, the old conservation model of one has one space and one has the other space, it's not going to work in the future. That's my opinion, that's what I believe, but I'm looking at the past and looking forward, and it makes it clear that this is the case. So one of the main things that we need to do to make lions work is to find ways where local communities can see value in having lion populations as their neighbors, or living in areas where lion populations also exist. And the main way to do this is through tourism. So tourism can be a very good tool. It can also be a very bad tool. But if managed correctly, tourism could be one of the biggest factors in ensuring that lions survive in wilderness areas through the future. So one of the things we've looked at is how can we incorporate communities into our work. Our lion project is fairly new. We only started the current lion project in 2016, but we've been doing projects to mitigate human-wildlife conflict since 1999. And one of our projects we had was a cheetah project, which turned out to be very successful. And I came to an area where cheetahs were seen as a total, they used to call them a parasite or a thief in the local language. It was seen as a thief because all it does is it comes, eats our animals and goes. That's what the local farmers would say. And I was at that stage heavily involved with a project where we used to go out and capture cheetahs and move them to new areas. So we used to relocate cheetahs. And the way we used to do it was we would say we'd do it for free. We do it as a free service. We come out, we identify the problem, and we take it away from you. And then it grew into a model where sponsorship was raised to offer compensation for the cheetahs in the wild. And that created a bit of conflict now, because suddenly you had farmers seeing that the cheetah was worth the equivalent of today, maybe 100,000 Rand. So about, well, with the exchange rate is bad now, but it was around about $10,000 a cheetah. So suddenly the cheetahs had value. And it created a situation where people were calling the group to come and translocate not cheetahs that were not really problem cheetahs. And that created a conflict. So I pulled out of that group purely for that reason. I felt that we are now offering too much money for the cheetahs, and therefore they're being ransomed back to us, even though they were not really, under threat. Suddenly somebody saw value, and now they wanted us to catch it. So it created a situation where cheetahs were being moved unnecessarily, and cheetahs filled up all the available spaces very quickly, similar to what lions have done now. There was no more space for us to take cheetahs. And I realized that one of the best ways to conserve these cheetahs is to find a way to get people to accept the cheetahs where they are. And one of the best ways to do that is to offer money. And money makes people accept different things. And the reason why cheetahs were so hated in the area was because they were eating their stock and their wildlife, therefore they were costing money. So I created a model called Rent for Cheetahs, where we would basically create a project on the land where the cheetahs are existing, get the owners of the land to accept that the cheetahs will be there, but we would then create a tourism project around those cheetahs, create a revenue, and by doing that, we'd be able to pay the farmer rent for the cheetahs. So now the cheetahs were paying their way for the first time. And it was a very successful model. And we need to, in my opinion, look at similar models to find ways for local communities and farmers to accept lions living around them, make them valuable, not in terms of their product, but what they can offer to tourism and bringing income into an area.
So would the living conditions for lions would be the same as that for cheetahs? Like, would you require the same area for the same number of lions as for cheetahs?
Well, as I mentioned before, the accepted area for a wild pride of lions in Southern Africa is around about 10,000 hectares, depending on how much game and how rich the area is, how much resources there are. But in terms of the law, you can now successfully relocate and reintroduce lions into an area of about 3,000 hectares, so about 7,000 acres. But that would require you to have intensive management of the natural game populations to sustain the lions. And at the same time, you'd have to put your lions on contraception, because you cannot have that group of lions breeding unless there is a place identified for the offspring to go. But if there is no place for the offspring to go, there is no new areas, you'd have to keep the lions on contraception to make sure that they can't fill up the area, and then we sit with a new problem again. So there are ways to do it. Cheetahs also require a minimum of 3,000 hectares to reintroduce them as self-sustaining, free-roaming wild animals. Cheetahs are much less dangerous animal to people, but they can cause a lot of damage to smaller stock especially. So they are still seen as a huge threat. Both require the same fencing systems to keep them in. So it will require more outlay in terms of having more natural wildlife for the lions to eat, but it is definitely possible. And if we took away the use of lions in small captive areas for canned hunting and for overutilization and overexploitation, if we made that illegal, everybody that still wanted to be working with lions would be forced to create bigger areas and to have more natural lion populations if they wanted to continue their work. So I'm not advocating in any way that I agree with the idea of shooting a lion for its skin or a trophy. But if it is going to be legal, at least make it legal in a properly managed wild environment, not in a canned, unethical place where some of these lions are being kept. So definitely it is possible to do this, but we'd have to make a focus pushing it in that way and stop the captive side.
Mr. Peniston, a few years ago, there was a huge hue and cry over Cecile the lion. And I believe it's the same person who has hunted quite a number of animals. And even after that, he has killed more animals. So what would you have to say regarding that? What is your
Um, before I answer that, I'm just going to say I have got some questions coming through in the Q&A. The questions are not easy to answer with a few lines, so I'll address those questions towards the end. I'll explain the answers to those. So trophy hunting is a very controversial topic, and the trophy hunter stands by his belief that his utilization of the animals in the wild sustains the population further, but it creates a need for that population, therefore they're protected, and it's their work and they're using the lions that actually makes those lions valuable enough to be conserved. So they feel that they are conserving by utilizing. The problem with that is not everybody is above board, not everybody follows the rules, and look at what happened with Cecil the lion. The hunter himself broke no rules, but the person catering for him, the person that made the money out of that lion hunt, broke the rules because the value of these hunts is just, it's astronomical. I mean, $250,000 is a lot of money in most places in the world. Can you imagine how much money that is in a country like Zimbabwe, who's most probably the worst economy in the world at the moment? You can imagine what $250,000 is worth to somebody. So people are going to bend rules to make sure that these things happen. So in that sense, I personally can't see why I would need to have to kill an animal to pay money to conserve it. I would be happy to conserve the animal and enjoy the animal without killing it. But in terms of the law, no law was broken with Cecil. And I personally don't agree with the concept of that type of hunting, no. But in Zimbabwe, especially, because this Cecil thing did happen in Zimbabwe, a lot of areas have been not abandoned, but they're not being conserved like they used to after the economy fell. And these areas are being propped up by big hunting companies, which have taken over concessions, and they're managing the concessions for their own use, definitely for their own use. I'm not going to say it for any other reason, but by managing it for their own use, there is the knock-on effect of the area is being better conserved and protected to allow these people to now do their own personal hunting. But personally, I do not agree with hunting certain species of game, especially. I mean, you can try and convince me that, look, if people are eating meat, it's better to eat animals hunted in a wild, free-roaming environment than cattle, because cattle or sheep have moved wildlife out of areas so that they could be accommodated. So for conservation, it's better that we eat game, not farmed meat. But when it comes to trophy hunting and hunting as a management tool, I disagree strongly with a lot of the people, and there'll be a lot of experts. If somebody hears this, they're all going to attack me now, I know it. But lions, leopards, species like that, their natural system does not accommodate hunting. An animal like an impala, a herd-structured animal, that herd is structured to cope with the loss of a certain amount of individuals out of the herd without it affecting the herd. That is why they breed like they do. Lions and leopards do not live like that. They have a very strict way of managing their territories, and it would take another male to come into the area and kill a local male to get rid of that lion. Their pride structures are not designed to be hunted every 2 years like we're trying to do with other game. So hunting lions, hunting leopards is extremely stressful on the entire population of animals, not just the one animal that has been killed. So I don't agree with that type of management to manage lions. There are other ways to manage lions, and like I said, there's also contraception if we have to. But to kill lions is, for me, a tough one.
Mr. Peniston, regarding a pride of lions, like how many males would be there? Would the male and female ratio be more or less constant, or is it just a random number?
It's determined by the environment as well. Your typical cartoon style lion pride is one big male and 7 or 8 females living in a pride together. And I mean, that is a typical pride structure, but it just depends on what the area is like, how much competition there are for prides in the area for males, how many males are free roaming in an area. If an area has a low number of males roaming around, it's easier for a single male to take over a pride. But when the numbers get higher and the density gets higher, you'll find males form coalitions either from birth. So if they're born into a group of males, when they leave their birth pride, they'll stay together until they get bigger. And then as a group, they will then take over another pride. They will go back and fight for a pride. And in an area where there's a lot of competition, it's reasonable to say that lions that are in groups have a much greater chance of taking over a female pride or another pride than a single male on his own. There have been instances now which have been recorded where non-related males have somehow found each other, joined up, and taken over a pride together. So lions, predators, are a very unique species, a very unique type of animal. They adapt to the environment. Leopards are incredibly adapted to the environment, and what we believed is the standard social structure for leopard is not what we thought it was. We now, with satellite technology, because we can track leopards remotely without them ever seeing us, we can track them 24 hours a day with satellites. We're finding out some incredible stuff about leopard that we never knew before. There's instances now of a male leopard killing prey and bringing that prey back to a female with his cubs, which is unheard of. It used to be said that a male only breeds, that's his only responsibility, and from that point the female's got to kind of protect her cubs from that male. So lions are the same. They are adapting to the environment, and there's no set rule. I mean, there are records of 5 males in one group taking over a pride, and then as far as they can walk, they rule, because they're just such a big group. They take over a number of prides, not just one pride, and that's as many, and that's how many prides they can have, and they rule those prides. So there's no set rule, but on average, a pride in a larger area will be 1 or 2 males and 6 to 10 females in a normal environment. Anything bigger is considered a mega pride.
And is it the role of the females to hunt and the role of the males to guard their pride, or do they interchange?
Well, there is a role, but it's not for the reasons we think it is. The male lion is not the big lazy character that just gets served, as cartoons like to portray them. A male's job is very difficult. He's got to walk that 10,000 hectare area on a regular basis, mark the territory, and keep all the other males out to secure his pride, because if he gets kicked out, all his offspring are going to be killed, and all the younger animals are going to go through it. It's a terrible time for a lion pride when a new male comes in. Often females won't accept them, and there are records of females actually being killed by the male because they just won't accept him. So the male lion has a job to do, which is to protect his pride. So very regularly he'll walk his boundary, sometimes up to daily. He'll walk that boundary and scent mark that entire boundary of 10,000 hectares. That's a huge area. Therefore, he has less time to hunt because he's got to cover these distances. He's got a job to do. So if he comes along and finds the females and they're calling him and they've killed something, yes, of course he's going to come in and eat. He is a wild animal. But lions, if they're not patrolling their territory, they're hunters, just like the females. They want to hunt. They enjoy it. It's what drives them. It's their instinct to test themselves and to catch prey. And in many areas, certain prides need their male to kill the prey type that's available. So some areas, the dominant prey species is buffalo. You need a male lion to help pull down a buffalo. It makes a buffalo kill much more effective if you've got 1 or 2 male lions. If you're hunting giraffes, you need the male lion. You need that big bulk and that weight to pull that giraffe down. So they do hunt. They're not lazy, but if they're not hunting, they're patrolling their territory. That's why they're seen as less of a hunter, because you always find the females hunting and the males are always off somewhere, and then they come back when they hear the females have killed. But definitely not the stereotypical lazy hunters. That's not the case.
And suppose there's a herd of elephants. Can they actually attack a lion and kill that lion?
Elephants traditionally have no natural enemies other than man. But again, because the world is changing, there are areas where, in Botswana, there was quite a serious drought in a specific area. And a lot of the game species moved out. But lions can't move because they're strictly territorial. So they've got to stay within their territories, even though the game is moving to find food and to find water. And one of the species that stayed behind were elephants. The elephant numbers don't drop. And there is a group of lions that actually learned to focus on killing elephants. And they had to create a way to do it. And now that part of that area, the lions hunt elephants. They don't do it as regularly as they did during the height of the drought, but every now and then they still will. And it's an incredible thing to watch how they have to think differently. They have to actually trick the group of elephants. They have to separate a youngish elephant away from that group. And elephants are so socially bonded together that to separate them is very difficult. They're an intelligent animal and they are super aggressive to protect each other. So it takes a lot of work to separate an elephant far enough from the rest of the group so the rest of the group can't hear it being killed and attacked. And each member in that pride has his own role. Some of the lions will draw away the females and the rest of the herd and attack them and attack individuals that they have no interest in, just to get them to move off where one's been separated and the rest of the pride is slowly moving that elephant further and further away. Then once they've got it far enough away, it's not a quick kill. It's not by no means a quick kill. It's a terrible process. It's a drawn out. Sometimes it takes them 2 days to kill that elephant. But what is important is lions have adapted and learned how to do this if they have to. So lions have been known to kill elephants, but never adult bulls and cows. It's always young sub-adults or youngsters, but they've worked out how to do it.
That's amazing. I mean,
Yeah.
the whole thing out in the wild, and there is no, no rewind, no forward. You can't pause. It just goes on. It's terrifying too, to think about it.
Yes, it's terrifying, and it's incredible that different species can adapt the way they do. Unfortunately, because lions are lions, they're a big animal, they're dominant and they're dangerous. It's harder for elephants to adapt to the changing world with human influence. Leopards, on the other hand, are incredible. I mean, look at all the cases in India where leopards are living right outside communities and have been living there for many years. Even in South Africa, we have leopards living very close to human communities where the leopards have adapted to killing rodents and insects. That's their major diet. And now dogs, they're eating people's pets. But leopard has been able to do this successfully without becoming apparent to the local communities and without really being a major threat to the local communities in Africa, where they're getting away with it. With lions, obviously, that changes completely because the lion just comes in and takes what he wants and kills all the big animals and the cattle and things like that. But but wildlife is incredible. It can adapt. It's amazing how things can adapt. And if we adapt a little bit to accommodate the species like lions, we would have a lot more space available for these lions.
Mr. Peniston, I would just like to ask you to address one issue, and after that, I guess we can go ahead with the question answers. So,
Yeah.
Could you tell us what is the role of the local people regarding conservation and the safety of the lions? How do they view the lions? Like, do they see them as a threat? Do they see them as a source of currency, or is it just part of their life?
It's not a one answer question, and it's area specific again. Some areas bordering certain national parks around Southern African countries do understand the value of the wildlife. They build their entire livelihood, the curio shops, the guys that make the trinkets that people buy, the accommodation facilities, all the services that come along to catering for international guests coming to view wildlife. The closer communities, a lot of them do see the value. But unfortunately, without it being managed properly and being more inclusive, a lot of people still feel that wildlife is a very elitist practice, conserving wildlife. They feel that animals are given massive areas to roam free, yet communities are really suffering on the boundaries. And until we address that and make that change, we're going to struggle with the concept. But it is slowly changing in some areas. Some areas it's going negative, some areas it's going positive. But it goes all the way up to government level. Government has to manage it in such a way that everybody feels included with their wildlife. And now a country to look at is Botswana for this specific idea, where Botswana, the government has declared wildlife a national treasure. And the people take pride in their wildlife. It's theirs. They all feel that the wildlife is theirs and they're proud of their wildlife. And that is why Botswana is one of the most successful conservation models in Africa at the moment, because their management policies are totally focused on keeping things free and free roaming and self-sustaining. But at the same time, the attitude towards wildlife is these are our animals. This is our country. We're proud of it. This is what makes Botswana special. And we have to do that with other countries and with other communities to make them feel that these are their animals that this is what they can identify through these animals. This is what brings people to the area, and this is their natural resource to utilize without actually harvesting. You can still utilize the resource without actually having to harvest the resource. And that's the trick now. That's where we are in the world, where we're trying to find ways to balance the need to use the land versus how much income the wildlife can generate for the people that needs to use that land. Therefore, they don't need to use the land anymore because they're able to economically sustain themselves rather than physically, and they have to sustain themselves subsistently.
Thank you so much. I guess we can go ahead with the question answers now.
Okay. So the first question I've got is, what can we do to conserve lions as students? As a student, the first thing you need to see yourself is as the public. The public have a role. And then as a student, you have a more responsible role than the public. One of the main things you can do is to support organizations that are truly trying to save lions in the wild. Now, remember, my organization, even though we do wild lion conservation as well, my main focus is to stop the canned breeding industry. So I make no claims to the fact that my Lion Watch group for canned hunting has any conservation value. Unfortunately, it does not. It's more of a humanist. It's the human inside me going, we cannot treat animals this way. We cannot raise them in these conditions. It's disgusting and there's no reason for it. But there's no conservation value in my Lion Watch project. But as a student who wants to help lions, you can support organizations that are trying to create new areas for lions. Things like African peace parks, things like that, the bigger organizations. You can also show your support through, I'm very nervous to say social media because social media can be a terrible tool, but it can be a wonderful tool. But you need to be careful with your social media vote because it has far-reaching consequences if you're supporting the wrong thing and you don't fully understand it. So make sure your facts, make sure what you're supporting is correct, and then put your name behind the groups fighting for a specific thing. Find the right groups and support them. And then shy away from celebrities holding animals, playing with animals, telling you they're conserving them because they're raising baby lions and lions are jumping on their heads and they're roughing up the lions. It's a lie, it's a con. And shy away from those guys. Don't support things where somebody openly raises baby lions and says they're doing it for conservation. It's a lie. If he's saying he's doing it for education, it's a lie. I'm sorry, I don't need to have to employ kids in a factory to make shoes to educate the world about why child labor is bad. In my opinion, you don't do the very bad thing to educate people why not to do it. So don't support people that are playing with lions, walking with lions. Try to, if you're going to go on a holiday one day, make sure you avoid places that give you one-on-one, hands-on contact with lions walking in the wild. It's one thing to go and find lions and watch them and view them. But to go on these experiences where you are catered for and you can play with the lions and the lions walk with you and they jump on you, it's a no-no because that is driving the bad side of the lion industry, which is making this demand for lion products bigger. So in my opinion, that's one of the best ways you can do it. And then just try and get into it. I know it's very limited. There's a very limited number of jobs in wildlife, but conserving environments conserves lions. You don't have to conserve the lion. You can conserve its environment, and the knock-on effect is you are conserving the lions. So that's the way I would look at it for now. The next question. Paying rent for the cheetahs. Thank you very much, Seema. It was a unique thing. And again, there's so many people around the world that jumped on us and said, but you're paying money. You're still part of the problem. And I wish I could do this without having to bribe people. I feel like we have to bribe them not to kill them. But it doesn't work in the world that we live in. If we don't make it worthwhile for the person we need to stop from doing certain things, he's not going to do it. Somebody who's shooting lions in captivity for money is not going to be told not to do it because it's wrong. He's already doing it. But if you can convince him, you can make more lions by keeping those lions free and safe and not destroying the image of South Africa through the canned lion industry. That's a way we can fix this problem. Not working on their ethics, but working on their pocket. That's a lot. Sometimes that is the way to fix things. So that's why we came up with the paying rent for the cheetahs, and it worked. It worked really well. The project is now closed. It ran for 10 years, and it closed because those cheetahs that are on that farm will never be under threat again. They are now accepted as a paying member of the farm. Okay. Are lions being hunted now? deep in the forests. So yes, lions are being hunted in true conservation areas, in big game reserves, but it's under a management policy. It's not just anybody can come in and hunt a lion. And to give you an idea, a wild lion hunt at the moment costs $250,000. So it's a very, very, very expensive thing to do. So it is well managed. And even Cecil, the lion,
I think we are having a connectivity issue. Just give us a little time. Please be there. We are getting connected again. There was a temporary glitch, but he is connecting soon. And thank you for your patience. Yes.
hello? Okay,
All good?
yes, sorry about that. Always issues. Okay, so I just see I've lost my open questions though. So all the questions are not there anymore. If you want, you can quickly send me your questions again.
I could read out the questions.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. So the next question is, are lions being hunted down now in the forests, deep in the forests?
Yes, we were on that, yes. Yes, they are, but mostly if it's in a conservation area, it's under management and it's a permitted occurrence. So yes, they are. Unfortunately, a lot of lions are being drawn out of the conservation areas and shot on different levels just outside. So that's where the worry is. But inside national parks and proper game reserves, there'd have to be a structure. There'd be a management plan in place and people would be shooting them under permits. But they are being shot, yes.
Okay.
So the next question is, a viral video came out of a person who threw street dogs into the river, and there aren't many laws against this. What are your views on this?
And the dogs being thrown into a river.
Yes.
When I started my Instagram account, I joined a few groups that are animal activist groups, and I've had to take myself off because I cannot see these things anymore. I personally can't understand how somebody can harm an animal in that way and not see that the animal is a sentient being. So it's obviously terrible. It's one of the reasons we're doing the Lion Watch project. It's not a conservation project, which is what we normally do, but it's because we just can't watch what we're seeing anymore. We can't watch how these animals are being treated and kept and starved and mistreated. So I hate things like that. I really wish that laws would be stronger against things like that, and we could change people thinking like that.
The next question is again from Shandita Das. It says, lions are dangerous, but they need to be taken care of. So what do we do if people in the locality do not accept that, because population is rising and the areas are reducing?
So that's the current problem right now. That is exactly what is the biggest threat to lion survival. And that's why, in my opinion, one of the best ways is to, first of all, listen to the communities, understand their problems. Don't just say they don't understand or not take them seriously, because in the end, they are going to win this battle. So we have to listen to the communities, take them seriously, address the problems we can, and that can include putting in things like satellite collars on the lions and creating remote systems that monitor them. And when the lions come close to an area where the community is or have their cattle, have somebody go out and speak to them and say, look, the pride is moving into your area, bring your cattle in for the night, and help them pay for that. Put up temporary structures for them that are secure so that they can bring their cattle in. Help them with the problem that they feel they have. And then the biggest thing we need to do again is to pay money. Get people earning money out of wildlife through tourism, and they're going to be okay. They're going to accept it.
Yes. Okay, the next question is...
Hi, were you able to hear that?
Yes, definitely. How many people are currently engaged in the project that you have undertaken? How many people?
So at the moment, it's myself and my wife. I have 5 staff members, and then we have a number of people around the world that have helped us and that are still helping us. They've been part of our project. They've come through more on a volunteer basis, but there's a lot of people out there, especially in England. We've got a number of people in England that have come out as students and become lifelong friends, and they're helping us currently. But inside the organization, it's quite small. And one of the reasons is because it's such a controversial thing that sometimes it's easier to build it up first and then bring people in, because there's a lot of stuff that happens, a lot of fighting, a lot of angry people, because we're changing people's lives by trying to stop this industry. Sometimes it's easier to start it from the ground, and then once you got it to the point where it's big enough, then you bring in people that aren't ready for the type of fight that we're fighting right now. So at the moment, it's quite a small organization, but we have many helpers around the world, and we're starting to work with some folks in the States now, which is not finished yet, so I can't really speak about it, but really exciting news that we're going to be working with some bigger organizations that are also going to put their weight behind us, which is quite important.
I believe you're also going to start working with a school in UK. The last time you had shared about that.
Yes. So we're hoping we're going to do a number of schools, not one, but one. We are discussing how we are going to put it all together now, how we're putting it into the curriculum, and how it's going to work to incorporate lions into their current curriculum. And education is most probably the second most important tool after tourism to saving lions around the world. So it's quite exciting. I'm not an educator, even though I'm involved with our primary school that we've started. I'm not an educator by trade, but education is a very important tool. So I'm very excited about it.
But you are directly involved in our education system now, because today's webinar is all about a project which has been taken up by the students of grade 8. And they are all our attendees. They are all viewing this webinar, and they would be working on it. They would go ahead.
Well, that's the thing. Going forward, that's the plan. Is it's as important to educate as it is to conserve, because we need people to understand what's going on.
Right. So the next question is: some people believe animals can coexist with humans through minimum interaction. What is your opinion about it?
I do believe that wholeheartedly, but the model to make that work is still far away. There's a lot of work to come up with the details to make a model like that work. But I do believe that is the way going forward. We have to find a way to coexist, not just with lions, but with our planet. If we can't coexist with it, we're not going to live on it for that much longer. And we need to think like that as a planet, as a group, as a whole. We need to think in those terms. On small scale, we can think about how can we coexist with lions in an environment right now? But on a big scale, we have to do that for the planet. If we can't coexist with our planets, we are going to die. We cannot sustain ourselves in. So I believe wholeheartedly that we can. And there are some models working now, like that cheetah project are saying. It's a very small piece of it, but it did find a way to get the problem solved. What was causing the issue was solved, and therefore the cheetahs were safe. It just takes a bit of out-of-the-box thinking to find a way to make the problem solved and make the communities around those animals happy to keep those animals. It goes back to even something like poaching, subsistence poaching. Now, subsistence poaching and large-scale poaching for product is very different. It's very difficult when you catch a subsistence poacher who's poaching for his family. It's very difficult for you to explain to him why what he's done is wrong. He knows it's illegal because he just feels it's a very selfish law, but he doesn't feel it's wrong because he has to feed his family. That is his first objective in life. So unless you include the local communities all the way down to the very last person living around that community, if not 100% agree, you're never going to make it. But you have to find a way to include the local communities to improve their lives through that wildlife. If you can improve their lives through the wildlife, they will help you keep it, but they have to benefit out of it as well. I once heard somebody say, and it was quite an important thing he said, was unfortunately, conservation models as they are today are still seen as very colonialist, where it's taken a beautiful piece of land, sometimes the best spots, closed it off to everybody except a few that can afford to pay to go see it. And if that's the conservation model we're going to go forward, we are going to fail. We have to find a way that the people that live amongst the wildlife, that live around the wildlife, have to benefit the most out of that wildlife. Otherwise, they're not going to accept it. They're not going to keep it. They can see more value in clearing the trees and planting food that will sustain them through tough times than keeping the wildlife. And we have to see it that way because it is a matter of survival.
So in the light of what you have said just now, perhaps we can not really say that hunting of animals which are a threat to the people who are living in the immediate vicinity, that is unethical.
Perhaps not, because it's after all a question of survival.
So subsistence poaching or subsistence hunting is not unethical in my opinion. No, I don't see it as unethical, but I do see it as a problem because the numbers of wildlife are not going to sustain people indefinitely. So it's not a long-term solution. It's a feed yourself now scenario. So that's why when I say when you catch somebody poaching, it's very difficult to even be angry with him because you know why he's doing it. And there's a difference between you get guys that come and poach meat to sell the meat and they've got a business. That's different. That's illegal. That's an illegal trade. But the person who is poaching an animal to feed his family, it's very difficult to say he's done anything wrong, even though he's done something that is going to negatively affect the environment that he's doing it in. I do understand his personal feeling. And so there have been a lot of successful projects around the world where the people they catch poaching, they train them up as game guards. And then they now fill the role of working to keep the wildlife safe and earn a salary which they can sustain their family. But that is not a thing that we can do on a large scale. I mean, there's only so many game guards we can employ. And there's millions more that are hungry, for lack of a better word. So we have to find a way the world is changing where we can't all live off our own land anymore. We live in cities now. We have to find a way that people can sustain themselves through the money they eat, through the money they earn, rather than planting the food that they eat. Because if we can do that, then they don't need that land so much. They don't need that wildlife so much. But if we can't find a way for them to earn money to sustain themselves, they are going to utilize the resources around them to sustain themselves. And that's the challenge. That's the trick now. That's what we all have to find, a working model that incorporates everyone.
Okay. There's this question that asks, whose hunting is more, male or female lion? I guess it's males.
Who gets hunted more or who hunts more in the pride?
I believe the child wants to ask who gets hunted more.
So the males definitely get hunted the most. Definitely. They've got the trophy. It's that iconic big mane. Yes. And that's what people want. And the reason why the lion is part of the big five is not because the big five is for tourism, it was for hunting. It's the 5 most dangerous animals in Africa to hunt. And it's an animal that's a challenge to hunt in a wild environment. And if you're hunting the animal, now, unfortunately, today people are doing things where instead of going out and actually hunting the animal down, they're baiting the animals, getting them used to eating on dead meat, on dead carcasses. And then they sit close by from a hide and shoot the lion and call it a hunt. That's not a hunt. That's an ambush. That's definitely not a hunt. But if you had to go out and hunt a lion in the wild, on foot, as a proper hunt, there is danger to that. And the male lion especially, will turn on you and go for you. He will protect himself through aggression. If he feels he can't get away, he's going to attack you. And there's been a number of cases where people have shot one lion in a group of 3 and the other 2 come to his aid and try and save him. So it's a very dangerous animal to hunt. So once you've hunted it, you now have a story to tell amongst your friends. It's one of those things you have to achieve as a big game hunter. I shot a male lion. Female lions is a bit different. And their value is less in terms of hunting because they don't have the big trophy, and it's not the status symbol that it is to kill the male lion.
Vaibhav Surana asks, have you ever been associated with lion conservation in India?
I have not. Unfortunately, I have not. I was considering doing some work with the cheetah conservation in Iran, but there's so much to do here that I feel I can do more here because I know more about what's happening here than to learn again and to understand all the new challenges from another area. So at the moment, our focus is here. And unfortunately, our focus is more on the canned hunting than on wild conservation because that's where there's a major issue at the moment.
So Mehfooza has a question. Are lions sensitive to children or do they see everyone as a threat?
Lions are a predator and they see children as easy prey. That's a bottom line. If we have people come and view our lions, if we have to be working with lions, if I'm moving lions, in any situation, I'm very strict on kids being close by because it triggers that instinct in the lion to kill. It's far more, and if you look at it in the wild, an adult animal can walk past a lion and a lion will be interested. A young of that same animal walks past them and the lion is up and stalking because their instinct is to kill it. So yes, they are more sensitive, but not in the way that we're thinking where they're not nurturing towards youngsters. They see it as an easy target and they want to play to kill it.
If the poorer countries of Africa became economically developed, would they be more protective towards lions and leopards?
They would if the tourism trends continue the way they were before COVID. Tourism is the driving factor. So if the countries developed in a way of making it easier for tourism to access these wildlife areas, but still protecting the wildlife, there's a fine balance between bringing in tourism to view wildlife and wilderness areas and destroying the area to bring too many people in. Because you're going to destroy it, nobody's going to want to go there anymore. So there's a balance. But if you can find that balance, yes, they will start protecting their wildlife because they will see the major value in having that wildlife. It is something special to view wildlife in its natural environment, especially big game. We often say it's very superficial that we always talk about lions, elephants, rhinos, and buffaloes in brochures and on TV programs when you're trying to create tourism. But unfortunately, those are the animals that inspire this incredible sense of awe when tourists see them. It's an amazing thing to see a giraffe for the first time, 4 meters tall. You can't understand how big it is until you see it one day. And that's what brings tourism. But those iconic animals conserve everything because for the giraffe to exist, the lion to exist, and for the rhino to exist, the environment has to exist. The environment has to be protected and secure. So therefore, tourism bringing people to view the big iconic species is going to create a great conservation model. And if a country develops to accept tourism, it's even better because people are scared to travel to countries that are politically unstable, dangerous, or not very well developed because they're scared they will get stuck there.
Okay, Rishi Brahma and Yash Agarwal, they have the same question. So I'm just putting it as one question. What resources do lions compete with?
What do they compete with humans? I'd take it. So I will explain it as what resources they compete with humans for. lions eat meat, meat eats grass, humans eat meat, and cattle eats grass. That's the easiest way to explain it, the simplest way. Humans farm animals that eat the same grass as what the predators eat. So if you need to have lions, you need to have wildlife. Wildlife is immediately competing with local subsistence farming. But at the same time, if there's no wildlife, those lions are going to start eating your herd animals. So they're competing for space, for grass. Even though they don't eat the grass, they still compete for it indirectly. And then if there's not enough of the natural resources for the lions, they start eating human farmed animals, which is the second problem. But again, like I say, one pride of lion needs 10,000 hectares to exist. So you can imagine it's a large area. It's many, many kilometers. So it's seen as pretty selfish if you're struggling to farm for yourself. You've got no space to farm food to survive, yet the lions are getting this massive area and you have no benefit from them. That's where they compete. They compete for space and resources.
Whose population is more? Is it male lions or females?
Females, definitely. A male lion has a terribly tough life. Life is tough for male lions. A female in the wild will live a lot longer than a male, because a male, he gets born into a world. As soon as he's a sub-adult male, he's competition to every other male out there. Even his own father's going to kick him out and want to kill him if he comes back. Then he's got to roam around as a sub-adult male until he gets big enough to take over a pride. And in that period, they form these nomadic groups. They're on their own sometimes they're in sub-adult prides, which move around, but they're targets for all the other lions in the area, especially the males, because they're seen as a threat. Then when they get to the point where they're big enough to take over their own pride, now they have to challenge an existing male or group of males. That can often get them killed. If they manage to take over their pride, now they've got to fight off every other young male or group of lions looking to take over his pride. So he's constantly at war with other lions to keep his pride safe. It takes a huge toll on them and they die a lot earlier. So as soon as he stops being 100% fit and in his prime, he's going to get kicked out. Either you'll be killed by another male or you'll be kicked out of his pride. And now he's nomadic in his own area and they decline very quickly because suddenly they're solitary. So male lions live much less. They live a lot less longer than female lions, and there's so much more pressure on them to make it that definitely there's more females out there than males.
There's this question, but I guess you have already answered this. There are many videos on the internet that have shown us that lions are friendly. Is this true?
Lions are super social animals. We have to understand that first. So yes, if a lion is conditioned to see humans as a friend, it's going to be super social with you. So that's why you see these, when people raise lions, the bonds you form with your lion, if you raise it correctly, it's stronger than the bond you're going to form with your dogs. They really bond with you and they express emotion to you more than a dog does. I've worked with lions where you're sitting down, the lion will wake up, get up, and then just start head rubbing you. It's just an absolute show of affection and reinforcing a bond with you, and then go lie down again and go back to sleep, where not even dogs do that. So yes, they can be super friendly to their pride mates, to what they know, but they shouldn't know people, because we don't understand lions. We can't talk lion, and 99.99% of people working with lions are not well enough trained to handle those lions. So that's when accidents happen, because lions also fight in their groups. They have social squabbles. And when two lions fight, it's not a big thing. When a lion swats at a human, he can kill that human without meaning to kill that human. And then suddenly the lion's now been seen as a bad animal again. But he shouldn't have been put in that position in the first place. But yes, if a lion knows you, it is an incredibly affectionate, friendly animal, for lack of a better word. Yeah.
Okay, Ankan Dey, he wants to know, how can we help you with your project from here in India?
First things you can do is just support us. Find things like our Instagram account, our Facebook account, follow what we're doing, put your name behind us. We need to grow our public standing as well. it's always easier if you're having a dispute with an industry that doesn't like you when you have just as many people that support you behind you. So just to understand what we do, follow us what we're doing, and have your say. Ask questions when we're doing a project on social media. Put your say in, ask what we're doing. But in that term, that's the easiest way to support us. It's just support us through social media. Get others to support us as well, which is great because that creates the awareness, that gets the message out. If you have time and you want to come out to Africa, that is our best way for people to support us, is come and work with us. A lot of people do ask to rather just make a donation, and if the donation equals what it would cost to volunteer with us, come out and spend that time with us, get that experience, learn what we do, work with the lions on the ground, and we earn our way with you, because it's much better for us to say we've earned our income to make these lions in captivity viable until they die one day of old age, rather than only receiving donations. Because when I argue with the canned hunting industry, when I go, how dare you keep lions in facilities like that? How dare you cut costs and starve these lions and not spend money on these lions, yet you're the one that makes $25,000 a canned lion hunt. That's a lot of money, yet the conditions are terrible. They turn around and say to me, but you don't know what we have to deal with. You're a charity. People just throw money at you. You've got money to do these things. We don't, and that's not true. I don't like that. So I would rather say, look, I earn my money like you earn your money, but I don't kill the lions, you do. I don't make the $25,000, you do, yet my facilities are 100 times better than yours, and my lions are happy and yours are not. Therefore, you're exploiting them. You're treating them like chickens. It's a chicken battery with lions. And that's what I'm trying to do. But to prove that, it's better for me to invite people to come and work with us. You pay your way, you enjoy the experience, you're going to leave with an experience that you can never, ever replicate. But at the same time, I can show that this is viable, that there's enough people out there that support our work, that are willing to come and experience, get an experience from it, and that way make it sustainable for the long term. So that would be the second way, would be to come out if you can. I understand that not many people can, but if I know once we had a group of students raise some money for us through a cupcake sale, and they raised a lot of money. I was very surprised. I was incredibly impressed. But having thought about it now, I would have said, you know what, raise the money, but then if it only nominates one person out of your group, nominate that person to come out here and do the experience with us. We'll still earn the money, but one of you has experienced what we're doing, is going to go back and tell everybody else what they experienced. So even sponsorship, if you're going to sponsor, don't sponsor somebody to come to us so that they can experience it, and in that way we raise money. And then the third is to get actively involved with other groups in the area, trying to also promote lion conservation. There's so many people out there trying to do different things that we need to all stand together and push and make our voices known. Be an activist, but don't be a crazy armchair activist, but be an activist. Say stuff. If you don't like something, say it and moan and groan, so people realize there's a lot of people in the world saying, hey, stop canned hunting, stop doing this, stop doing that. Even though they're not doing it for the right reasons, when they stop it, they're going to do it because of public pressure. And that's what we need. So be an activist, if nothing else.
Mr. Peniston, in the months to come, maybe, we could have that series of webinars that we had discussed about, and you could guide the children more on this, how they can actually do something.
Yes.
And become an activist.
Exactly. And become a responsible activist. There's nothing worse than somebody shouting about something they don't know. You have to do your research. You have to do your own research. It doesn't help to just trust me and say, well, he said that, so therefore it must be true. Go and check up what I said. Go and find out, are there actually 20,000 lions in captivity? Are the prices actually $25,000? Are they really being kept in these conditions? Find out. Once you believe that you know what you need to know, then you need to fight for it. But responsibly, not name calling and getting into swearing battles on social media, but actually responsibly do stuff with your name. If you put your name behind somebody who's trying to do something good, it makes it easier for that person to do it.
Ankan also wants to know, why are lions called the king of the jungle?
Traditionally, the lion is the top animal, the one that rules and the one that everybody respects the most. And if you walk up to a lion and you disrespect him, what's he going to do? He's going to hurt you. No, that's a joke. It's a cultural thing. It's a cultural thing and a storybook thing. And traditionally, lions have always been seen as a royal symbol. You look at many royal families around the world, they've got the lion as their symbol, as their coat of arms, as their representative in almost any culture. So I think it came from that as well, where we said, well, these animals are royal, they are special. African culture, in many African cultures, they put them as the spiritual leader of the bush. So I think it comes from that. And then the storybook world and the cartoon world grabbed it and made it stick. Like the Lion King, as much as it's done good for lions, it's also done horrible things for lions, because it creates these false relationships with animals, makes people believe lions are like this and hyenas are like that. And it's the storybooks that people read have also had a strong influence on it. But I think it's the link to the symbol of royalty with many royal families around the world. Hello.
We'll take this as the last question. It is from my colleague Seema Barwa. So she has a very sweet query. She asks, "Sir, it's so soothing to hear nature's melody. We can hear birds chirping. So where do you stay, in the village or in the jungle?"
So I am currently in Alldays town, our closest little village. You guys can Google it and see where it is. It's called Alldays, Alldays. That's the closest town to where I live. But I live an hour's drive away from here. So I live in the middle of the bush, an hour's drive away from here. But even our school is in a wilderness, not a wilderness, but a rural area. So there's a lot of game farms and a lot of game ranches and private game reserves around us. And that's why you can hear all the wildlife. But I'm at our little primary school. So we have a little primary school in Alldays, and that's why I'm sitting here, because we've got a good, and you can hear this primary school in the background. We have a good internet connection, and that's why I'm here. Hello? I think we've lost the internet. Hi, can you hear me?
No, we can hear you.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you so much, Mr. Peniston. And now may I request Principal Ma'am to speak a few words.
Okay.
Anubhav ma'am, are you there?
Ma'am, I think ma'am is not there.
Yes, is she there? Prabhu?
Ma'am, I think Anubhav ma'am is not there.
Oh, okay. In that case, it's all right. We will go ahead with it. And yes, my sincere thanks goes to our audience who have been such active participants, and patiently you have stayed with us for more than an hour. Special thanks to Radhashri ma'am and Neha ma'am, and to our IT department, without which we would not have been able to have this webinar. Mr. Peniston, it's been a pleasure having you with us today. And let this be the beginning of a mission to raise consciousness among our students about the majestic king of the jungle. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much for having me. And I apologize again for the flustered nature of this morning's webinar. It was just a crazy day. What I will do is make a short little clip for everybody to have a look at what we did do this morning and the animal that we did try and help stuck in a fence, just to explain what we did this morning. But thank you very much.
So keep the oceans blue, the planet green, and the animals safe. Namaste.
Bye-bye.